Welcome to What is Good, a podcast from the Texas Baptist Christian Life Commission, where we explore contemporary cultural issues through a biblical lens. Micah 6:8 says that God has told us what is good, that we're to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with Him. So whether you're seeking a better understanding of how to live that out, or you're just curious to understand a Christian perspective of what's happening in our culture, we hope that you'll find today's conversation helpful as we discuss what is good.
Welcome, everyone, to What is Good, a podcast of the Texas Baptist Christian Life Commission. And we have a very special broadcast to bring you today. I am here with two of my hosts. I'm joined by Public Policy Director John Litzler.
Hey, David, how are you?
As I said, I think already, I'm very excited. Did I already use the word excited?
You did. You said
I'm
you're
excited.
excited.
All right.
Well, I hope our listeners are excited, even though we don't have a special guest. We've kind of been spoiling them with our special guests.
Yes, we had to.
We got to bring them back to their roots.
Exactly. That's right. And the voice you just heard is our director of the CLC, Dr. Katie Frugier. Welcome today.
Hello, I'm glad to be here. And we also have with us, obviously, David. But David, you have a new title, Breaking News.
Yes, I am now assistant to the regional manager, David Sanchez. I'm very excited about this.
All the way. Well, David is officially serving now for this upcoming year as our Associate Director for the Christian Life Commission, for those listening. And super excited to have you helping kind of remove some of the plates that I have spinning. So excited for that. Congratulations.
I am, and honestly, like, when I gave the title Director of Ethics and Justice, I would get so many quizzical looks. Like, how do you direct justice? What is that even about?
Justice this way. Ethics this way.
That was going to be my What is Good. This will be two podcasts coming out.
Nice. Way to go, Katie.
Sorry, I buried the lead.
It's now tradition. But, John, I would like you to take it from here and talk about what we are excited about and why this episode is, in a rare way, going to come out almost like immediately after we record.
Yeah, so, and you're right, that is rare. That's going to be exciting, too, for it to drop so quickly. We are in the middle of the 89th Texas legislative session. So our Texas legislators meet every other year. They meet in odd-numbered years. So they met in 2023. They did not meet in 2024. And now they're back, and they meet for about 140 days every 2 years, and they started in January, and they'll go to the very beginning of June, into the first few days of June this year. And what the CLC has done traditionally and historically is, in the years when the legislature is in session, we hold an event called Advocacy Day. And we bring Texas Baptists, church leaders, pastors, lay leaders down to the Capitol in Austin, and we talk about public policy priorities of the Christian Life Commission. We meet with legislators, and we're doing that again this year, March 3rd and 4th. So part of this podcast is an opportunity for us to invite all of you to come down to Austin and participate in this. There is a link where you can see the incredible lineup of speakers we have. We're going to get a little bit more into that today. You can see our schedule, but I'm going to tell you the link. It's texasclc.org/advocacy-day. And I am going to ask David if he would put a link to that in the show notes.
I think that's one of my duties now.
Oh, yeah.
Link in
do
show
everything
notes.
you tell me
It's
to.
a promotion requirement. Did it get it in the job description?
Man, I should have put it in there. Put the link in the show notes.
So that's a little bit about what it is. I mean, we're going to pack it some more as we talk today, but we're really excited about it. The other thing that I didn't mention is that this makes 75 years of the Christian Life Commission.
It's huge.
So yeah, it's a nice even like number. We started in 1950, and so the 25-year marks, make it easy to tell exactly what year of CLC life we're in. So,
do you think they were going to start in 1949, but then somebody, who's kind of got
Just
a little
said,
OCD,
guys,
was like,
this is
just
bad.
wait,
Just
just
hold
wait
off.
till January 1st. It's going to make our anniversaries so much easier to remember.
I'd like to think there was.
if that's the case, the current CLC staff just thanks you for thinking of us.
Yes, thank you so much.
And making this easier. But it's really fun. We're going to be doing it. It got a little bit smaller over time. COVID happened, and we've had some changes in our public policy director. I didn't make it quite as large of an event last year, But we're really trying to go big for 75 years. And so we'd love for everyone to come out and join us. And you'll hear a little bit more about what that's going to be like throughout the episode today. But I don't know if our listeners, if you're not really plugged into the Texas legislature, you may not know how many bills are filed every session.
Many.
There are so many.
John, do you know roughly how many bills were put in last legislative session?
There were over 10,000 that were put in
gosh.
last legislative session. And there are going to be over 10,000 again. I saw over the weekend, there's a group called the Texas Legislative Council. And basically, you're supposed to submit your bill to the Texas Legislative Council to make sure everything's in order. They make sure the bill is proper, the structure is right.
Is it like proofreading for a bill?
Yeah, it's like proofreading. It's like sending your book draft to your editor or something, you know? They just want to make sure it's all in order. And there's a thing called pre-filing, so you can actually start filing before the legislative session starts in January. There are over 9,000 bills that have been submitted to Legislative Council. About 3,500 of those bills have been filed.
So we know more is coming.
So we know more are coming. They're working their way through Legislative Council. As a matter of fact, it's kind of a common joke. Oh, Leg Council is backed up right now. That's a common thing that I've heard in my couple of sessions at the Capitol. January 14th is when the session started, and you've got 60 days to file. So our March 14th filing deadline is still over a month away. So there's a lot of time for those bills to get filed. So I say that to say, in part, that's a lot of bills. And we're not going to advocate on every single one of those bills.
It's not possible
Some of those bills,
to.
Yeah. And so what we do is we set priorities. We prioritize, think of kind of like a triage system almost. We prioritize the bills that are most important to Texas Baptists and reflect our values and the things that we're trying to speak to Texas Baptists about caring about. And so our 4 public policy priorities for this session, which we set in collaboration with our CLC commissioners, we have a Christian Life Commission that has commissioners on it who are, again, pastors and church leaders and things like that. Those 4 priorities are Sanctity of Human Life. That's one that's been a priority of Texas Baptists for a long time. And we've talked recently, and we can talk more if y'all would like, about how that's kind of shifted in the post-Roe world, Mm-hmm. We do still care about prenatal life and the sanctity of that life, but we've also been having really good and healthy discussions about what it looks like to be pro-life after a child is born and support moms and young families and that kind of stuff.
They can also go back and listen to one of our earlier podcasts where we talk about it.
Yes.
Link in show notes.
We're just creating more work for David left and right. Religious liberty is our second one. Fair and just financial practices, which I know that's a broad category, but traditionally the CLC has been combating exploitive lending practices from payday lenders, really high interest rates and that kind of thing. We're also very concerned about efforts to expand gambling in Texas, whether that be casinos or sports betting apps, that kind of stuff. And then our fourth one is a new one this session, and we haven't actually had this title before. It's Human Flourishing, which is sanctity of life adjacent, but kind of the way I would describe it is not every issue about human flourishing is necessarily life or death, or it may not be life or death in every circumstance. And so while we are pro-life and we care about life and death circumstances that kind of more fit under the sanctity of life, human flourishing is for stuff that may not directly result in anyone's death, but we care about because everyone's made in the image of God and you have inherent value and dignity. And so think of things like how we handle our immigration matters in a humane way that upholds and reflects people's value and dignity, regardless of whether they entered the country legally or, their country of origin. Justice for survivors of sexual abuse may not technically be a life or death issue, but is a human flourishing issue. Yeah. And so things like that. So out of those 4 categories, sanctity of human life, religious liberty, fair and just financial practices, and human flourishing, I'm just curious, Katie and David, if y'all maybe have a favorite category or maybe an area within those. Those are big, broad categories on purpose, but maybe a particular bill, or an area that we're working on within one of those categories, or maybe one that just stands out to you. Maybe favorite's not the right word, but something that stands out to you about our work in those areas.
Well, I'll just go ahead and jump in and say I'm super excited about the new one we've added, this human flourishing component, primarily because, as you guys know, since I've been with the convention for a little over 5 years now, I've been an advocate and voice for the pro-life movement, but I've tried to be as loud as I can that the pro-life movement can't just be pro-birth. It has to be holistically pro-life, and that's been like a drumbeat that I feel like I've tried to be consistent in talking about. And I feel like you said this is really an extension of our commitment to the pro-life cause, and really trying to expand the Christian imagination to what does it mean to be holistic in a commitment to being pro-life. I think about the words of Jesus where he says, I've come to give you life abundant. How do we support that in different iterations? Like, what does abundant life look like outside of the womb, you know, in a disability or in jail or in difficult circumstances? Like, how do we still want to have a commitment to that? So I'm really excited about it. I think it's got a lot of different opportunities to advocate as far as different bills and things like that go. I think about the last legislative session where, you know, John, you remember we were at the Capitol late and ended up getting to testify on a bill that was going to basically remove the R word from Texas law. That's not a life or death issue, but I have a child with intellectual disabilities, and the R word is very harmful. It's hurtful, and it is diminishing to just the capacities and the things that the Lord has given her. And so it was a real honor to get to testify on behalf of the BGCT, but also as a mom and somebody who loves someone with an intellectual disability. Like that is a way of supporting her flourishing, is to advocate for that. And that bill actually passed. Of all the bills, that was one of the ones that we actually did see actually go all the way through the process and the governor signed. And so that was an example of a bill that we supported last session that really fits nicely within this idea of human flourishing that we're talking about right now, that I'm looking forward to more opportunities to also.
I think it was actually the first bill maybe that the governor signed last session. So I'm not saying that Katie gets things done around the Capitol, but she testified, and I think it was the first bill that the governor signed. So.
Pretty sure that's why he did it. I'm pretty sure.
That's great, John. I feel like mine, it really changes on the day and the story that I'm hearing about. You know, I think one of the things I'm passionate about when I hear about the work that we're doing and when I see what you can do, John, is a lot of times we can't stop a bill from going through, but we can tweak it. And I hear oftentimes of a bill that's been poorly written and how it unintentionally will impact the least among us. And I feel like, especially when it comes to the financial practices or bills related for human flourishing, like a lot of times it's just, if we could just amend this a little bit, if we could just tweak this a little bit, there's going to be less loopholes. There are going to be less ways to take advantage of people. There's going to be less people who fall through the cracks because we don't notice them. And so I think mine's more of a broad answer. I'm passionate about the ways that we can help our legislators write better bills so that maybe they're thinking of their base, but we're thinking of the least of these, because I feel like that's what we are charged to do at the CLC.
So good.
Yeah, that is good. You know, one of the things that can be tough when you're trying to make positive change, you know, not when you're just trying to avoid harmful bills, but when you're trying to create positive change in positive bills, is that only 14.5% of these bills actually pass. So we've talked about how a lot of bills get filed. Ledge Council has 9,000 of them so far. Only 14.5% of those are going to pass. So, you know, around 1,200 or so of those bills. And so what makes a difference between a bill passing and not passing often is constituent involvement and community speaking up and all that stuff David was just talking about, which is one of the reasons why we love Advocacy Day so much. It's because we give people an opportunity. We say, hey, what bills matter to you? What topics matter to you? Let's help you, you know, advocate on this issue and see if we can make it one of that 14.5% and get some positive stuff done. So I really like what you had to say about that, David. And before we get into the specifics of what Advocacy Day is going to look like this year in just about a month or so, I want to talk a little bit more about Advocacy Day generally. You guys were both around for Advocacy Day in 2021. That one looked a little bit different because COVID still, that was a weird legislative year. Like things were just odd at the Capitol that year. I wasn't around. I was, as public policy director, I wasn't in that role, so I wasn't at that Advocacy Day. We did have an Advocacy Day last year. That
2 years ago.
2 years, excuse me, last session, 2023.
It feels like yesterday.
Time is flying.
Yeah.
It's funny. I used to think of things in terms of each year, and now I think of terms in legislative sessions, and so I often refer to 2023 as last year because what I mean is last legislative session. But
I don't know why that makes me think of the $2 bill. It's like you just think like
everything's a $2 bill
increment.
to me. Everything's in two increments. I don't think of anything as an increment of one anymore. So anyway, but we were all at that one. And so my question are just kind of like, what are some of your favorite things from past advocacy days, or what are some things about Advocacy Day that have stood out to you? If you were inviting someone to Advocacy Day, as we all have, what are some of the things you'd tell them about kind of your past experiences and maybe what you've gotten out of it?
What I really love about Advocacy Day, or one of the things I really love, I guess I could say, is that we actually are hosting it in Austin at the Texas State Capitol, because there's something just innately intimidating, I think, about the idea of just going to the Capitol and advocating. I don't think it's in the natural temperament of a lot of people to just say, I'm just going to go and knock on my legislature's door. It's a beautiful building. It's huge. And I love that we just can kind of hold people's hands or just kind of guide them in to be able to actually get their hands dirty, get their feet wet, whatever metaphor we want to use, to actually get to be a part of this process. And in that process, I think it's eye-opening for those who are participants to be able to be like, wow, I actually can do this. It kind of I don't know what the right word is for that. It makes it demystifies. That's the word I'm going for. It demystifies the advocacy process, where you think that it's just people in power suits going into these buildings. And you go in and you see moms in T-shirts that, have their cause on it. And you see students on their, on their field trips and things like that. And it really does help you see that this is the people's house, that you can really go in there, that these are real people, that they're approachable, and you can do all these different things. So I love that. But I'll also say, secondarily, I think our Capitol is beautiful. I was in another state last summer, and I don't want to say that I was boastful, but I will say I texted John, and I was like, man, I'm glad we're not going into that all the time. Like, it just was a little... So it's also just an aesthetically beautiful experience to get to go into our Capitol. Some real artists put their life's work into it. And so it's also just really cool to be in that building.
That's good. I'm glad that you mentioned that, Katie, because every time I go in, I think, I'm so lucky. I work in the most beautiful building in our state. Like, this is the most beautiful building in our state, and I get to work here. And by work there, I mean show up there. My daughter tells people I work at the Capitol, and I think they think I'm a politician or have an office or something. And I'm like, no office.
No office.
I just come in all the time. I'm just a perpetual tourist.
But for listeners, John is a master. Like, he knows where everything is there. Like, I've been there, I don't even know how many times, and I get lost still. And I stand in awe of your knowledge of the building. That is literally... amazed to me still, because there's a building beneath the building, for those who haven't been there. And that's where it really starts tripping me up.
Katie is kind to say that, but I think the main reason she might be saying that is because last year her daughter came with some friends from school on a field trip, and the thing I know is not how to get to the building underneath the building, the extension that they added on underground. The thing I know is where the senator and representative whose district covers Brenham is, because Bluebell has some ice cream in there. So what I know is where to get the kids ice cream when they come on their Capitol visits.
I'll just say no one else got ice cream if their mom was giving the tour. So it was pretty cool.
John, would you say another hot tip is bring comfortable shoes, because you will get your steps in?
Yes, that is a great tip. I got some new shoes this session, and I had blisters on my feet. I thought I had broken them in by walking around before I got there. But after walking around the first couple days at the Capitol, I had blisters on my feet, and I thought, I did not break these shoes in properly. So,
oh, sorry to hear that. One of the things for me about Advocacy Day, it's really hard to pick. I loved getting to hear individuals talk about what they were passionate about. I thought it was cool that it's one thing to show up at the Capitol. It's another thing to know where your Senate or House representative is that represents your area. It's another thing to have an issue that you're passionate about. But in the midst of all of that, it's so helpful to know what bills are coming down the pipeline that actually relate to what you're passionate about and why you would want to be for or against those bills. And I think that's what I like most about Advocacy Day, is the way it equips us with very simple steps for what to advocate for and how and when, that I think makes the whole process, again, demystifies it, makes it easier. But I also just liked going with John, who everybody knows.
John the Baptist.
Into an office
it's so
with
great.
John. Yes, that's his name there. And they would say, hey, John, and who's your friend? And suddenly, I'm talking to a senator or a staffer or somebody. They're looking me in the eye. And they want to hear from us. And I think I was expecting to be treated as just, all right, let's just get through this as quickly as possible. Let's go on to the next one. Let's make sure they get some memorabilia from our office and they felt seen. But I actually really did think they were conversing with us and hearing what we had to say and making sure that our senators, if it was an 8, making sure, our senator, House representative would know what we had to say to them. And then just going in and feeling equipped to be like, and this is the bill and this is why I support it, or this is why we don't as Baptists. I thought that was fun.
Yeah, that's good. David, you touched on something that's great. We'll elaborate on more of it at Advocacy Day, because it's part of our Advocacy Day. We're going to prepare people what it's like to have that meeting, to go meet with your senator or House representative. But sometimes people get disappointed when they end up speaking to a staffer instead. And the staffers can be quite young. It's a very popular, first job out of college, get some experience. But that's like speaking to the member themselves. I mean, they have staffers who specialize in certain areas. You can go in and say, I want to speak to the staffer on education because I have a question about education bill. And that person's an expert in that area. They basically transcribe everything you say word for word to relay it to their member. And so one of the key things I tell people is when you talk to a staffer, treat them exactly as though you're talking to your elected representative, your senator representative, because it really is just an extension of them. So I'm glad that you said that about the staffers paying good attention and making you feel valued and appreciating your input. So I kind of got ahead of myself because I started talking a little bit about what it's like to meet with a representative. And that's one of the things we're going to be covering at Advocacy Day, but that's only one of the things we're going to be covering at Advocacy Day. We've got a lot of things going on at Advocacy Day. So I want to start, David, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about kind of the schedule for March 3rd, where we're going to be on March 3rd, and then a little bit about where March 4th and how that the second day will be different. And I may add a couple of things about March 4th because that's the Capitol Day, and I know a little bit more of the details there. But
yeah, so March 3rd, we are going to be meeting. How close is this place, this venue that you guys found for us?
So
it's at 800 Congress Avenue, and the name of it is what again?
8CO or 800 CO.
Yeah, I think it's called 800
800 CO. So this is a location actually my husband found as we were trying to identify different possible venue locations. And this is literally like, if I was a really good football player, I could probably throw a football and hit like Capitol grounds. It is very close. And bonus point, there's a coffee shop right next door. It's great.
So the Capitol building is located at 1100 Congress. So it's 3 blocks south from 8th Street to 11th Street.
So March 3rd, we're meeting at 800 Congress. Schedule-wise, we'll be getting 9 a.m. is when it opens for registration and coffee. Speaking of coffee, we'll have a welcome at 10 a.m. 10:30 is our first of 3 keynote speakers, and we've had one of them on the show. We had 2 of them on the show. Oh my goodness. Well, we got to work on getting the 3rd now. But, Steve Besner, the pastor at Houston Northwest and author of the book Your Jesus is Too American, will be our first keynote speaker at 10:30. We'll have a break. We'll have lunch. At lunchtime, though, we have my favorite of the speakers.
Are you allowed to say that?
Public Policy Director John Litzler. We'll be speaking on Advocacy 101 and doing more of the details that we've just touched on here. At 1:15, a keynote speaker, Curtis Chang, who helped work on the After Party and also co-wrote the book The After Party with Nancy French. Another break, and then Tim Alberta will be our final keynote speaker. But then we'll also have, and I think my favorite part of this will be, we'll have a panel discussion with the keynote speakers after that at 4 p.m. Final thoughts, we'll have a dinner meet and greet at 6:30, and then that moves us into Tuesday, where we will, after having been equipped, we'll meet together and visit at the actual Capitol itself with our legislators. And John, and we're also attending a House or Senate session. Could you give us more details on that?
We will.
Right?
Yeah, so we're not certain exactly. The House and the Senate will settle into a routine. They're not quite there yet. And when they do, when they come into session, one of the first things they do, they usually have a doctor of the day and a pastor of the day, and the pastor of the day opens the session in prayer. And on March 4th in the Texas Senate, our BGCT president, Dr. Ronnie Marriott, is going to be the pastor of the day. So he'll be opening the Senate session in prayer. So we'll go sit up in the Senate gallery, whether that be at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. or what time they open that day. and just enjoy getting to hear, our convention president give.
Will we wear
opening prayer.
T-shirts that spell out his name? Can we do that?
I don't think
You
that's
can
in
do
dress
that.
code for
I'm wearing a suit. I'm not going to make anybody else wear a suit, but I'm wearing a suit. But that's going to be that morning, and then hopefully also a resolution recognizing 75 years of CLC work, so that everyone in the gallery can kind of stand to be recognized. That's a common occurrence in the Capitol. They open their sessions with every college gets a day. They have a Texas Tech Day and a Texas A&M Day, and there will be constituents and people from leadership and stuff that'll stand up for that. And so we'll kind of have our own CLC Day there. On the 4th, we'll meet right there at the Capitol, like David was saying. We won't come back to 800 Congress that day. We'll meet at the Capitol. And then the part that we've kind of been talking about that's really exciting there is either before or after we're in the Senate for their session that day, we will have signed up anyone who's interested for meetings with their senator or their House representative. We will have already talked through kind of how those visits will go, and then our CLC staff will help. Last year we kind of helped get people to those meetings on time, and even maybe accompanying someone if they don't want to have to go in alone and all that kind of thing. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting time. Thanks for walking us through that schedule, David. I had forgotten that
you're one of the speakers?
Yes. When you said a favorite, I was like, David, you're not allowed to pick a favorite out of these wonderful men. No, but for people who've been listening to the podcast, you probably enjoyed very much the episode with Steve, and you probably enjoyed the episode with Curtis. And so these guys are going to be here. You're going to get some FaceTime with them. You're going to get some more in-depth knowledge without us interrupting with questions. So if you enjoyed those episodes, be sure to sign up and come. Katie, do you want to tell us a little bit more about each of the speakers that we have?
Yeah, I mean, they're all respective experts in the various fields that they occupy. They really serve as prophetic voices to be able to just have a Christian presence in the public sphere, which is a fine line to walk, right? That it's always a challenge of wanting to speak prophetically and represent Christ in a faithful way without crossing over into becoming maybe more of a Pharisee or someone that's more judgmental. Micah 6:8 is all about the balance between justice and humility and mercy. And I think these guys do that really well. And I'm excited to hear from them in the different ways that they're going to speak to us about the way Jesus calls us to kingdom commitment, to be kingdom-minded as we navigate our earthly citizenship. We're going to have Curtis talking about kind of the how of Christian advocacy and just the posture that a Christian should approach the conversation. And then Tim's just got a great eye to talking about the dangers of power and how that can corrupt just the Christian witness when we give in to the temptations of pride and power, and how we see that play out really at the national level. He's such a prophetic voice to that. So looking forward to having all three of them. The vision for this really started with us just saying, what if? And kind of really grew from there. And it was really kind of seeing this snowball of just continuations of yes after yes after yes. So I really feel like the Lord has had his hand on this from the very beginning. We're not a big group. We're not a very big team. And just to be able to see this kind of event coming together like this, I really feel like it's just the Lord's favor to be able to give us this moment to be able to call people to think carefully about how do we engage in the public sphere while being faithful to our witness, first and foremost, as citizens of heaven. So I'm so excited. I'm really looking forward to it. I know we've said that a lot, kind of preaching to the choir here, but I think it's a great opportunity just to pause and reflect on our past while we're looking to where do we go from here.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. I think this is a really great lineup. I feel very blessed that each of these men have said yes and made it time and availability in their schedule to come. I know it's a sacrifice for each of them to be able to be here. So I think that's really great. And then the other thing I would say, as wonderful and as popular as those men are, there are like Hollywood celebrities sometimes at the Capitol too. You don't know. You never know who you're going to bump into. So come over with us on March 4th.
I have a question. Who's the most famous person you've seen at the Capitol so far?
That I've seen or that I've spoken to?
Oh, both.
I have spoken to James Vanderbeek from, I think he was in Dawson's Creek.
Yes,
maybe?
my millennial heart is a little excited right now. You're speaking my language.
Yeah. So I saw him last session. He was walking around, and it was funny. I was sitting on a bench just talking to somebody, and he walked by, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that guy's from TV. But I couldn't remember his name at the moment, but somebody introduced him to me. And then Jennifer Gardner was on the floor of the Senate. I did not speak to her, but she was there on the floor of the Senate. But I'll say this, Hollywood wants to do more filming in Texas, or at least some folks from Hollywood do, and they want tax incentives to do it. They're saying make it a friendly state for filming so that we can film here instead of out in California. And so there was a commercial that came out lobbying the Texas legislature to pass a bill for more tax incentives for filming. And Matthew McConaughey was in it. He's definitely been at the Capitol before, although I haven't seen him. Woody Harrelson, Dennis Quaid, Billy Bob Thornton, Renee Zellweger. You think of all of these kind of really famous celebrities who are from Texas that would love to be able to film their movies here. It's a good place to do it. We've got hills, we've got deserts, we've got, pines, we've got every type, we've got ocean, we've got all the settings to film. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're around, and what they'll be specifically pushing is a bill that would give tax breaks or tax credit or incentives to movie makers who want to film here. So I can't promise you they'll be there on March 4th, but I bet you'll have a better opportunity of seeing them if you're with us at the Capitol on March 4th than you are if you're at home or in your office. So.
But it's also worth adding that they are rich and can pay for advocacy. And so they did not make it onto one of our 4 top priorities. We will not be advocating for those bills.
Film incentives didn't make the cut. It's one of the other 9,000 bills that didn't make the cut as a top priority.
However, I do just need to say, as a little bit of a flex, because I love where I live, there is a very significant TV show that a lot of people watch, and they have regular filming in my neighborhood, which is super cool, and we love it, but sometimes it is a little funny because it basically shuts down our neighborhood for like 2 days while they're there for filming. So more of that to come, apparently.
There's a popular show among a lot of Christians, not all, but a whole lot, called The Chosen. And doesn't it film up there near Fort Worth somewhere?
It does. I think Weatherford, I believe, area.
Weatherford. So a Texas film show that a lot
apparently
of people
Weatherford looks a lot like Nazareth.
I'm glad you said that, though, David, because another thing I would say is when people come to Advocacy Day, we're going to talk about our public policy priorities, but even in the broader picture, as Katie said, our speakers are going to be talking about generally how to be a Christian witness and how to engage in the public square as a Christian on any topic about whatever is passionate to you or whatever matters to you, whatever you're passionate about and care about for your community. So it doesn't have to be one of our priorities. You might prioritize some things differently. I got a text from someone who's a state employee who said, hey, there's a bill about allowing more work from home opportunities for state employees because it's really expensive to live downtown Austin, to be close to work. And so they're thinking about maybe letting us do 2 or 3 days at home or 2 days in the office. Will you let me know how that bill's going? And we may have someone that's a Texas Baptist that works in the film industry that says, hey, I actually really do care about that tax credit bill because I travel out to California several times a year. And man, I would love for us to be able to do this in Texas instead. Or something medical. Someone who's, a nurse says, hey, there's this bill that's going to affect hospitals and I want to know about it. And so your visit is your own. And you can talk on any topic you want, even if it's not one of our priorities. So we just want to help empower and educate Texas Baptists on how to get involved and be part of the process. We want you to feel equipped to be able to do it yourself. And if we can take you on that first visit or set up that first visit and help you get your foot in the door and learn how to do it, I think for the rest of your life, you'll feel a lot more comfortable anytime there's a topic that comes up that you care about.
And could I add one more way that our CLC team might be able to serve Texas Baptist if it's not throwing John under the bus here too much? Just if there is a specific bill or something that one of our listeners is listening to but doesn't know how to track it or is just curious, like, how do I follow this to know if it gets a hearing, I would be willing to come. We would be happy to help track that and reach out to you and say, hey, your bill's got a hearing. You want to come and testify? I feel like that's one of the ways that we would be able to offer just as a resource to people who are listening or other Texas Baptists. It doesn't have to be one of our policy priorities, but if there's a specific thing that you're tracking and would like to come and advocate for, we can help you know when to do that.
Yep, that's a great thing to offer, Katie. Thanks for doing that. Unless we get thousands of people requesting that, in which case we'll
which case our thousands of listeners, we can't do it.
So I talked a little bit about, it's kind of fun. Sometimes there's celebrities. I didn't mention there are a lot of athletes sometimes because pro sports teams are lobbying for things. And so sometimes the athletes come up there. But anything else about being up at the Capitol, fun things that can happen or fun stories? I kind of mentioned the ice cream thing kind of as a joke, but it's just kind of a fun thing that happens up there. Any great stories we have from being in or around the Capitol that you want to share with people to encourage them.
I would just encourage that there are some really nice people in the Capitol. This isn't necessarily advocacy related, but I was there visiting with my daughter who's in a wheelchair last legislative session, and the sergeant in arms was trying to help us get her onto the floor to be able to tour. It should be wheelchair accessible. Our governor is in a wheelchair, so it shouldn't be that hard to get a wheelchair onto the floor, but it just wasn't working. And he went above and beyond 2 days in a row, remembered my family, and just was so accommodating and so kind. And so there's just some really nice staffers who are around there. And so sometimes it's just nice to be in the building and get to talk to the people who kind of are just there day in and day out and just want to make it a good experience for everyone.
That's so good. I love our Capitol staff. I don't have anything to compare them to because I've never worked in another Capitol, but you're right. They're the best. They're absolutely great. All right. So thanks for joining us as we talked a little bit about kind of Advocacy Day and the role of CLC in advocacy, the stuff we're doing down at the Capitol. Obviously, as our Director of Public Policy, it is a subject that's very near and dear to my heart. I'm up at the Capitol all the time because I'm really passionate about this stuff. But I really appreciate all of my colleagues, David, Irene, and Katie are also passionate about it and the way that they believe in the work that we're doing there as well. And so this has been an extra fun episode for me because we're talking about a time of year that I get really excited about. I think advocacy is good, but as we always end every episode of our podcast, we're talking about what is good. Let's talk about some other things that are good besides advocacy down at the Capitol.
I have some exciting news. I recently got a promotion.
Whoa! Breaking news.
Assistant to the regional manager.
That's
Dr.
not
Katie
the title,
Puget.
David. It's a great Offerings reference, but it's not the title.
But I want to hear, John and Katie, what are your what is goods as we end the podcast today?
Well, my what is good is just even reflecting, since this is going to be an episode done more in real time. In real time, this last weekend, I spent the last three days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, in Kerrville, Texas, where the women's ministry at Trinity Baptist Church, which is a very strong Texas Baptist church, asked me to come and lead their conference, and their theme for this year is going to be Micah 6:8. So they wanted to do a deep dive, and man, we went deep. Like, we went into Hebrew, we went into all sorts of different nuances of what it means to put Micah 6:8 within the context of Scripture, within the context of Micah. And I was so encouraging to see these women who really wanted to go to the next level in understanding how to apply Micah 6:8 to their lives. So that was a really encouraging, inspiring time. And so also, I think we got 2 new podcast listeners out of it. So if you are one of the 2 women from Kerrville who asked for our podcast, welcome. We are so glad you're here.
Awesome. That is really great. Thanks for listening. My what is good is just about getting to know my neighbors. So we've lived in our house for a little over a year now, and we've had an opportunity to get to know our neighbors more. I think I mentioned on an episode that I'm not sure if it's going to air before this or after this, that my daughter has learned to ride a bike that she got at Christmas.
That's so cool.
And that has really helped because she's riding the bike up and down the street and neighbors are saying hi and they're like, oh, your daughter's doing so well riding her bike, and we're getting to have conversations. And so I just have, sorry if any of my neighbors hear this, I'm stalkerish. I have a little note app on my phone and I keep the information so I can remember people's names and facts about them because I'm so bad at that. And so, they'll tell me where they work and I'll put it in the note app so I can remember for the next time I talk to them. But I'm starting to get to know my neighbors a little better. And I'm at a place where I feel really comfortable about having like a neighborhood cookout or something like that, and a block party, and just kind of inviting all the people over. I won't know all of them, but I'll know enough that people will feel comfortable and we can get to know more. So I'm really excited about doing that, maybe here in the spring in a month or 2 when the weather gets a little bit nicer, just having everybody over and grilling or something. But it's been fun. It's been a fun development in our neighborhood.
Yay. Well, again, we want to encourage everybody. It will be in the show notes how to register for our Advocacy Day, 75th anniversary, amazing keynote speakers, including John Litzler training us on advocacy. We'll be equipping you to go speak at the Capitol to your representatives, and we are just so excited for this chance. So we really hope to see you there. If you think I'm a nobody, well, we want you. And
yes.
It's so exciting just to get to go and be a part of that process and to do it in the name of Christ with a Christian witness, with a heart of compassion, with posture of respect, and just to be a light in a place like that and to take the body of Christ and the Spirit of Christ into those areas and be a blessing. So we hope you will join us. John, Katie, any final thing to say there?
Nope, we're excited. And if you can't make it to advocacy, we are hoping to be able to record the keynotes and drop it here in the feed for the podcast as well. So if you can't make it, it's okay. We'll still try to share some of Advocacy Day with you in episodes to come.
Stick around because we will have another interview for our next podcast episode with ERLC President Brent Leatherwood. So look at us. We're a small group, and yet somehow God is giving us these really cool opportunities to talk to great people. I think I want to finally close by saying, yes, we are small. We have people coming in from all over the country. And if you would be praying for us until March 3rd and 4th, when it actually happens, if you listen to this podcast early, please pray for us for the logistics, for safe travel for our speakers, and for a time that honors God and affects this world for his kingdom.
I'm just closing out a bunch of tabs. Okay, I'm ready now. Sorry, I had to shrink the tabs.
Have you seen that meme where it's Jesus with the Samaritan woman and she's like, I'm not using a tab, and he's like, truly you're speaking the truth because you have 56 tabs open and the tab that's open now you are not using.
I haven't.
Just at me next time.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Gracious.